Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. It's Tuesday, August 12th. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. As the Trump administration's immigration enforcement crackdown continues, some Valley residents have started to carry their passports to prove their citizenship.
Despite being either U.S.-born citizens, American citizens, or naturalized citizens, I think there's just a big culture of fear.
We will learn more about why some are turning to this option right after these news headlines. California Democratic leaders continue to push for a redistricting ballot initiative in response to Republican-led efforts in states like Texas. At stake could be control of the U.S. House after next year's midterms. Governor Gavin Newsom says state lawmakers have until August 22nd to call for a November special election. The governor's faced criticism for his plan to temporarily suspend California's independent redistricting rules, which voters approved nearly 2 decades ago.
And we are not talking about eliminating that commission. We are talking about emergency measures to respond to what's happening in Texas, and we will nullify what happens in Texas.
Assembly Speaker Robert Rivas says the redrawn congressional maps, which will be selected by state Democrats, will be made available to the public this week. Republican Congressman Kevin Kiley of Rockland, whose district could be affected, says this undermines reforms voters approved more than a decade ago. A trial started on Monday in San Francisco over the use of the California National Guard by the Trump administration. A judge will decide whether the use of military personnel to control protests in Los Angeles violated federal law. The trial follows a lawsuit filed by California over the Trump administration's orders to move the troops to LA earlier this summer. The case could set a precedent for how Guard troops are deployed in other states. A deputy commanding general testified Monday that the military forces were allowed to take some law enforcement actions. The Catholic Diocese of Fresno was in the hot seat on Monday in a public court hearing. As KVPR's Carrie Klein reports, it's part of the diocese bankruptcy proceedings.
The hearing was a chance for Bishop Joseph Brennan and other diocese representatives to answer questions under oath. They spoke with a U.S. trustee and lawyers for sexual abuse survivors. The hearing took place by phone, and recording was not permitted. Most questions dealt with the diocese's finances, its real estate, insurance policies, and bank accounts. But conflict arose around the 150 lawsuits filed against San Joaquin Valley priests. Most have died or no longer work for the diocese, but a lawyer pointed out that at least one priest, sued for abuse, is still employed and is still working with children. Brennan responded that those abuse claims are unsubstantiated. The lawyer then commented that it's troubling they don't agree on how to protect children. Sexual abuse claims against the diocese are set to be resolved in federal bankruptcy court. For KVPR News, I'm Carrie Klein.
The Buck Owens Crystal Palace in Bakersfield is shutting its doors. KVPR's Crescencio Rodriguez Delgado tells us what led to the decision.
Owners of the Crystal Palace say the music venue will be shutting down in the coming months. It's named after the American musician and singer-songwriter Alvis Edgar Owens Jr., also known as Buck Owens. He pioneered what became known as the Bakersfield Sound. Owens adopted Bakersfield as his home, but he was originally born in Texas. His family cited a challenging business climate for deciding to close the venue. The family also wrote that it wants to step back from the business. The venue will remain open for already scheduled events, but its managers say they will also search for a potential buyer in the meantime. The Crystal Palace has been in operation for 28 years. For KVPR News, I'm Crescencio Rodriguez Delgado.
The Big Fresno Fair is still months away, but organizers are already looking to fill dozens of jobs. A job fair will be held this Thursday at the fairgrounds in southeast Fresno. Doors open at 9 a.m., and the event will run until 1 p.m. in the Commerce Building. The fairgrounds is offering part-time work in areas such as ticket sellers, parking attendants, customer service, and janitorial staff.
Support for Central Valley Daily comes from Fresno Mazda, part of the Prieto Automotive family, leading the industry in the IIHS 2025 Top Safety Pick Awards, helping move Mazda closer to the goal of eliminating traffic fatalities. More information and the Mazda digital showroom available at myfresnomazda.com.
And now to our main story. The Trump administration's crackdown on illegal immigration has had far-reaching effects, sparking fear in even U.S. citizens. For instance, one man in Texas was recently ordered out of his car by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The man told a local Fox News station he didn't have a chance to prove his citizenship by pulling out his Texas ID before he was detained. ICE issued an apology statement and said the man had the same name and appearance as a violent criminal in the country illegally. That's just one case involving U.S. citizens and immigration agents this year. Cases of mistaken identity can be worrisome, especially when legal citizens start to fear for their safety. The Fresno Bee reports that is the case in Fresno, where some residents have started carrying their passports with them during day-to-day errands. One man tells Bee reporter Melissa Montalvo he even recently renewed his passport, not to travel, but just to have proof that he's a U.S. citizen in case he encounters immigration agents. Melissa spoke with residents like this for her reporting, and she joined me at the KVPR studios to discuss more. She starts by telling us how she was able to find her sources.
I spoke with a lot of people for this story. I put out a call on Reddit and just introduced myself as a reporter and asked people if they were carrying their passports. It's something I'd heard from anecdotally from colleagues and other journalists, and I was curious if others were doing this. And sure enough, I got probably dozens, if not hundreds, of responses on Reddit of people saying, yes, I'm carrying mine. I don't want to be profiled. Others saying, no, I'm not going to do that. If my rights are violated, I'll file a lawsuit. Others who said, no, this is overblown. But I ended up speaking with a couple more folks here in Fresno, and simply stated they are starting to carry their passports or passport cards because of the immigration enforcement that we're seeing nationwide.
So since the start of the year, you at the Fresno Bee have consistently covered stories of immigration enforcement. In January, KVPR reported on a raid by the Border Patrol in Kern County. You have also stayed on the story since then. How have these ongoing operations affected the Valley over the last several months?
So ever since January, the Valley has seen both enforcement activity and then just the impacts of that January Border Patrol raid, which was termed Operation Return to Sender.
Yes.
That, I think, created a ripple effect of fear in the region, folks seeking immigration services, really educating themselves, and advocacy groups educating people on their rights, on what to do if there's an enforcement activity or if they have an encounter with ICE. We've also seen activity in the courthouses that some of my colleagues have reported on. We've seen folks self-deport, decide, you know what, I'm going to leave. I don't want to be taken to a prison in El Salvador or taken to another country. So people making those decisions for themselves. We've also seen an increase in the number of detainees who do not have criminal charges at the facilities in Kern County. We have Mesa Verde in Bakersfield and Golden State Annex in McFarland. So we've seen more detainees, and we've also seen talks of potentially a new ICE facility in California City in Kern County. That would be the largest in the state, holding over 2,500 detainees. And CoreCivic owns that spot, and it's currently under negotiation. CoreCivic's negotiating with ICE on potentially a long-term contract. They have started hiring ever since April and other activation activities. So that's something we're watching closely.
And CoreCivic is what exactly?
CoreCivic is a Tennessee-based private prison operator. CoreCivic and Geo Group are some of the two biggest operators of private prisons with immigration and with ICE contracts, and they also have other facilities in the state that are not immigration related as well.
Is this facility in California City currently vacant, or would it be repurposed for ICE? What's kind of the status now?
Yeah, it's a facility that was previously used as a state prison, a privately operated state prison. It was closed in early 2024, so the facility is there. Might need a bit of work, but it's already built. So
Okay.
they have a new sign outside, actually, that's already says California City, ICE processing center.
So what's your understanding of where the Trump administration currently stands on immigration enforcement at large?
Well, there is the directive that federal immigration agents arrest around 3,000 people per day as part of this mass deportation campaign. We've seen other agencies, federal agencies, get involved, not just ICE or Border Patrol or CBP, Customs and Border Protection, but also the FBI. We're seeing HSI, Homeland Security investigations, and there's kind of an all hands on deck at the federal level. Just recently, we saw that the federal government has made an emergency request to the Supreme Court to let them continue doing their roving patrols in the Los Angeles area. So there's allegations of racial profiling, of people getting picked up based on their skin color, based on their ethnicity, based on their location, if they're outside a Home Depot. So we're watching that federal injunction. Of course, there's another federal injunction here in the Eastern District of California, which covers the Central Valley, over the raid that happened in Kern County in January as well. So despite that court injunction, there was a Border Patrol operation in Sacramento earlier last month. So there has been some activity in the region in the Central Valley, but we haven't really seen that high-profile operation, very public operation since Kern and, I guess, Sacramento.
Sure. So I want to get back to this idea of people carrying around documentation to prove that they're citizens in their own country. These are U.S. citizens that are doing this. What do you think that tells us about where we're at right now?
What I heard from several families and individuals that I interviewed was fear, a lot of fear. Despite being either U.S.-born citizens, American citizens, or naturalized citizens, I think there's just a big culture of fear. I think folks are wondering, okay, well, there's also an attack on birthright citizenship. So how far back will that go if successful, right? And
Right.
One individual I spoke with, Andres, he goes to Home Depot a lot. He's doing home renovation work. And as we've seen, some of these enforcement activities have taken place at Home Depots. And he said, you know what? I'd rather be safe than sorry. I'm going to carry my passport around. Gone there about 6 times in the past month. I'd rather be safe than sorry. And he's of Mexican descent. His parents were, crossed the border illegally and then were eventually naturalized and received their citizenship. But there's still fear.
Definitely makes me think about ceremonies I've covered as a reporter where it's such a celebration when people become citizens, and what a different tone it sets to then feel compelled to have that proof with you. We have to talk about the other side of this, which is people who might think this is going a little overboard to have this fear. Is there proof that immigration enforcement is in fact detaining citizens?
There have been citizens detained in some of the operations in Los Angeles. In Sacramento, there was a citizen detained. Now, in some of those instances, the Border Patrol or ICE might have argued, hey, they were interfering. They were, in Sacramento, the allegation was that the individual slashed tires. So there's more details that surrounding these arrests. But I think it's a very credible fear. And if we go back to the federal court here in Fresno, the Eastern District Court of California, the judge said, you can't just go up to people who are brown and ask them for their papers. So I did speak with a lawyer. I spoke with Olga Grosh of Pacifica Immigration Law Group, who shared that, yes, people can consider having evidence of their valid immigration status handy to avoid concern, if you're concerned. But to avoid, loss or theft, maybe you want to carry a copy. But she did say, what does it mean, right, that a citizen lives in fear of being kidnapped by their own government? What does that say about where we're at right now?
Fresno Bee reporter Melissa Montalvo, thank you for joining me in the studio.
Thanks for having me.
And that is today's show. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden and KVPR with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. You can find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.
These days, there's so much news, it can be hard to keep up with what it all means for you, your family, and your community. The Consider This podcast from NPR features our award-winning journalism. 6 days a week, we bring you a deep dive on a news story and provide the context and analysis that helps you make sense of the news. We get behind the headlines. We get to the truth. Listen to the Consider This podcast from NPR.